Viewers, we welcome you to a special conversation on COVID-19 in Africa called the Ecobank Live event, a special initiative of the Ecobank Group to engage customers and the wider public across their 36 footprints in Africa to create awareness and provide support for COVID-19 within the continent. My name is Bernard Avle. I'm a radio and TV journalist based in Accra, Ghana, and I have two very distinguished guests for this program. From Addis Ababa, we are very privileged to have Dr. John Kegansong, who is the director of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. He's joining us from Ethiopia. Doc, great to have you. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to join your program.
Thank you. We're also privileged to have the Managing Director for Ecobank Ghana Limited, Mr. Daniel Saki, who is also the Regional Executive for Anglophone West Africa. Mr. Saki, great to have you. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernard. Good to have you too.
Dr. John, let me start with you. Around this period, we are seeing close to 250,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases on the continent, close to 6,000 deaths. What's your overall overview of where Africa is with COVID-19 as we speak?
So our continent is now at a very different phase of the pandemic compared to 5 months ago. If you recall, the first cases of COVID-19 were introduced on the continent on the 14th of February, and to be very specific, in Egypt, and followed by Nigeria. And it's taken us a while to get here for several reasons. That countries reacted quickly and locked down the frontiers, locked down their system. That slowed the pandemic. And now we are at a very different phase of this pandemic. And as you rightly said, we've touched or approached 250,000 people infected mark with about 6,000 deaths. I think that is significant. And a few countries, about 6 countries contribute to the overall about 60% of the burden of COVID-19 on the continent. That is Egypt, South Africa, Algeria, Nigeria now, and Morocco. So I think that has to be stated very, very clearly. So I think we've entered a period where we have to make very bold decisions and aggressive decisions in public health practice. As we all know, we are unlocking our economies, and which is the right thing to do, but we should balance between saving lives and saving economies. The only thing we have to do now is to intensify public health efforts. That is, you rapidly scale up the testing so that we can find those clusters of where infections are. Secondly, track those who are infected, isolate them or quarantine them. Thirdly, make sure that we intensify our contact tracing efforts. We develop an army of young people that can go around the country and identify those the contacts of those who are infected, and also be able to provide some other services there. So this is the time to think outside of the box, to be aggressive in what we have to do, to prepare a hospital or healthcare facility to accept a large number of patients. As you said, we are now 6,000 mark in terms of number of deaths, and that only increased with time.
Thank you. So, Doc, looking at 54 African countries, is it even possible to generate a COVID-19 curve? Because, as you said, about 60% of the cases are from a few countries. So are we at an acceleration phase, a deceleration phase?
No, I think that's a very good question. I mean, we are seeing a pandemic that is extremely heterogeneous across the continent, with Southern Africa and Northern Africa having the lead. And even within a region, like the SADC region, you see a vast difference in the distribution or the rates of infection, where South Africa predominates in excess of about 95%, and other countries are really seeing a slower progression there. So yeah, you are right. We, as a continent, it's difficult to make a continental projection on where we will see the peak and how the peak will be flattened. So we need to look at this as a continent, but also look at it regionally, and then within each region, you focus on specific countries there. And in each region, there are countries that are leading the charge there in terms of increased number of cases. Like in North Africa, Egypt, Algeria, and Morocco are driving the pandemic there. In East Africa, you have countries like Somali, Sudan, and Djibouti, and West Africa, Cameroon, DRC, and Gabon. So it is a very heterogeneous epidemic that we are seeing, or pandemic we are seeing on the continent.
Fantastic. A lot of viewers have sent in questions for both you and Mr. Saki. So I'm coming to you shortly. But Mr. Saki, just quickly, running a huge organization like this within a COVID period, how has it been for you on a work level? How are you coping?
No, thank you. It's been a challenging period because I don't think in our wildest dream anybody could have planned for a phenomenon called COVID. So definitely there have been challenges, and I think different organizations have coped differently. Just as he said that we are in a different phase of COVID today, so far as the banking sector is concerned, we also say that we are in, let's say, phase 2. And phase 1 for us was one, ensuring the safety of our clients, the safety of our staff, adopting the usual preventive measures that CDC and other health-related organizations had advised. So you find that virtually in every branch, every outlet, we wanted to make sure that there was availability of facilities for people to wash their hands. We had hand sanitizers on every branch corner, and virtually in our offices on every floor, in front of every door, to make sure that as you enter and leave, you have the opportunity to provide the preventive, comply with the preventive measures. So that was the first part of it. And I would say that in terms of finance and banking, we are in the second phase of it, where we now have to contend with a new normal. And that new normal is how do we operate in this environment. In the first part, our focus was, apart from ensuring the health and safety of our staff and our clients, we also focused on granting clients access to their finances, access to their bank balances, access to be able to make basic transactions. And then you would then realize that working with other collaborators such as the telco, we granted access to funds either using the bank's mobile app, or for third-party transactions, relied on connectivity to national platforms such as GIFs and other related platforms to be able to facilitate the transfer of funds from the accounts as we have it and into other third-party accounts held at other banks, or through the mobile accounts held with the telco. So we had succeeded in one, ensuring safety, to allowing clients to transact at the basic level. Now, when I say we are at the second phase for we the banks, that second phase is how do we exist normally with COVID? And existing normally with COVID in this sense means that we now have to start conceptualizing that the digital investments we've made in our digital platform should now start serving the purposes for which they were made. We are focused on being able to serve and deliver services to clients using the mobile channels. Today, that preparedness is what has allowed us to scale to the second phase. One, to ensure that we can relate with our clients in their homes, in their offices. We have now had to exercise a new work environment. And in that new work environment, a certain proportion of our staff are at each time out of the office. So we then have to allow people to work from home and work from other destinations. For the bank in particular, that means that making sure that we have robust systems to ensure that when people work from home and access the systems, the bank's structures are not compromised. That means that adequate protection from cyber crimes. It also means educating our clients as to the importance of complying with the various safety measures that we have specified in their access to this digital platform. So that is where we are. Phase 1 was basic access, safety. Phase 2 is, in addition to those same measures, trying to ensure that we can operate in a new normal. And in doing that new normal, very limited access to staff, limited access to clients, and limited access to some of the offices of our clients. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saki. Let's get into the questions. Abeku SL has a question for Dr. Kenga Song. Abeku wants to know, why is COVID-19 fatality in Africa far less than it is in the West? What are we doing right, Doc?
So, I mean, that is, let me frame the question differently. And we talk of fatality there across the continent, we see that, and if you define fatality as the number of people infected and of those, how many have died, I think then it gives you a number that is very similar to the West. And there are a series of countries that is giving you that fatality that is even more than what you see in the West. Okay, so again, by basic definition of defining fatality as how many people would actually die of those that are infected. But if you are looking at fatality in terms of the overall number of people that have been that have died of this since February, which is, I say, 6,000 compared to that. Again, I want to be very cautious here that our numbers are increasing. Just last week, the number of fatality in deaths increased by almost 30%. Okay, and that is across the continent. So we are gaining speed. Okay, there has been a delayed pandemic, and now we are gaining speed. Just no one should be under that be complacent that our numbers are that low. Having said that, there are certain things that could possibly be working for us in our favor. That is the young population we have. It's very possible that, of course, that could play an advantage. Also the distances that we have to cover. I mean, in most countries, besides the capital cities, I mean, when you go to remote areas outside of that, it gives you a lot of remote areas or rural or semi-rural areas that we have most of our people live. That also could be preventing that total number of deaths, not fatality. And lastly, however, we have to know that there are other forces that are playing against us and who play against us. Those include the endemic diseases that we have. For example, the tuberculosis, malaria, HIV, and also malnutrition will play against us. The rising numbers of non-communicable diseases will also play against us. So again, we are very early in phase 2 of our pandemic, and we have to analyze our data in a more conscious way and deliberate way before we make a bold statement as to whether our fatality is less than in the West or not.
There's another question, and I'll stay with Doc. This question is from Primrose Osei, and she is asking you to enlighten her on the relationship between coronavirus and hypertension. I think she's asking this because in Ghana, quite a number of people who've died have had an underlying condition, which is hypertension. So I guess that's why Primrose is asking the relationship between COVID-19 and hypertension. What's your comment, Doc?
Good. What is that person's name?
Primrose.
I think that's a very good question. So let me and be ready for a little bit of detailed biology or science here. Okay. So if you look at our blood vessels, okay, they are lined by certain enzymes called angiotensin converter enzymes 2. Again, I'll repeat, angiotensin converter enzymes 2. Those are enzymes which are proteins that they line the surfaces of our blood vessels to make sure that our blood pressure is kept normal. So unfortunately, it's abbreviated ACE2. Okay, so unfortunately, it is just those enzymes that the virus attacks and uses those as a binding site to infect us. So it begins to decrease the ability for that enzyme to do it to perform its function. So that's why people that are infected with the virus who are hypertensive suffer a lot, because if you are hypertensive, it means that enzyme was anyway naturally not working well. Then the virus comes and attack it, and then you get even more severe effects there. So they just retain that the enzyme called ACE is affected by this virus, and it creates tremendous harm to our blood pressure.
Wow, thank you for that. Because of the big enzymes, let me move to Dan. to get to clear my head. Dan, you have a lot of questions coming in from all over the continent for you. Frank Apia wants to know, how safe is your new head office in these times, especially the elevators and the lounges?
Yes, as part of the preventive measures that I spoken of earlier on, just to recap, we had made sure that as you enter the office, you would have the basic hand washing facilities available. Then in addition to that, you have the hand sanitizers. Also, we make sure that in front of every office, we have hand sanitizers available for people to sanitize their hands, both as they enter the office and as you also leave the office. But what is important for our clients is that at this point in time, we are encouraging you that if you don't have anything to do at the branch head office, just use our digital channels, because you can basically access most of the services that we have on the same digital channels. And we have made sure that our ATMs are equally well positioned, and you will find that virtually beside each ATM there will be hand sanitizers available, so that we encourage you to sanitize your hands, access the service, and when you finish, make sure that you sanitize your hands again, so that you enter and then you leave in a safe manner. So we can assure that our head office in particular is very safe for them to visit if they have to.
There's an interesting one from Eric York, and I think it's a follow-up to what you just said. Eric is asking whether Ecobank will consider drive-through banking, where customers will sit in their cars and be served like pizza.
Well, this is one of several recommendations of head. We have reviewed it. For now, we don't see an immediate need, but it's something that we are considering, because it will also mean directly reorganizing some of the physical infrastructure that we have. And if you look at most of our branches and their locations, obviously there is a challenge in terms of accessing them as drive-through locations. So even if we are going to do that, there will be very limited locations where this will structurally be feasible. So once again, it's something under consideration. It will be applicable to only limited branches when done, but our encouragement is, as usual, is that you will be able to access the same services using our digital platforms. Thank you.
Fantastic. Let me come back to Doc, because you are getting some very interesting questions here. And this one is from Auntie Christie. Auntie Christie. She says, Doc, how are we going to build immunity against the virus when we are being asked to stay indoors? Doc, that's your question, if you can hear it. Doc, are you there? Okay, we are not getting a response from Doc. I will come to Daniel and then I'll come back to Doc when I sort that technical issue out. Doc, did you hear the question? All right, so Doc can't hear me. Let me come back to Daniel. So I think there's a question from Derek for you. There's a question from Derek. He wants to know.
Hear the question if you can,
Oh, okay, you didn't hear the question. Okay, Doc, the question was from Auntie Christie, and she's asking how we can build immunity against the virus when we are asked to stay indoors. Did you get that? Okay, we will sort that out shortly. Daniel, there's a question about accessing funds. There's a question about accessing funds. So if you are there, let me take your question, your comment. Derek wants to know how he can access his funds in these times. This question is from Derek.
Sorry, in these times you can access. Derek can access his funds through our mobile app, where you can engage in all basic transactions, make transfers to any other bank in the country, and also make transfers in and out of your mobile wallet. So basically, he's covered. For businesses, in case Derek runs an SME, he can use our Ecobank online platform and still be able to make all his payments using that platform. So access to funds are guaranteed during this COVID period.
There's a big question for you, Daniel. This one is, will there be enough cash during the pandemic? Sub question: do I need to keep large amounts of money in my possession to protect myself in case there isn't cash available in the future?
I think fortunately where we are today, we can say that we have seen the first phase of that, and that adequately answers his question in the sense that during the total lockdown phase, cash was available throughout the period. All our ATMs were regularly replenished. We maintained a standby team that was mobile and had the duty and task of replenishing any ATM that ran out of cash during the period. And just to also make him a bit more comfortable, right at the head office, we have a monitoring tool that enables us to monitor the level of cash in every ATM so that we can determine ATM that are running out of cash based on the withdrawals that are coming out of it and plan together with the mobile team to replenish it also on time. So he has access to his funds and he does not need to run the risk of keeping unnecessarily large sums of money in his pocket because he will still be able to transact during the period.
Thank you. This is an Ecobank Live event. Our hashtag is Ecobank Live. We also have the hashtag AskEcobankGH. Our guests are Daniel Saki, who is the Ecobank MD for Ghana, and also for Anglophone West Africa, he's the regional executive. We're also privileged to have Dr. John Kengasong. He's the director of Africa CDC, and he's currently in Addis Ababa, originally from Ethiopia, Rojamiles, Ethiopia. Doc, there was a question from Auntie Araba for you, which we didn't get through the first time. If you can hear me, let me put the question through again. Auntie Christy, actually. Dr. John, can you hear me? Hello? All right, so we're having some challenges with Dr. John. I probably would type the question to him where he is so he can comment on it when he comes on, but we can't get sound with him. So let me stick with Dan, and then we'll come back to Dr. John while we get the question through. Now, there's a couple of questions around updating your account details and banking remotely. So, for example, Philip Sechi is asking about your Express Points, whether your Express Points can handle large cash transactions. This question is from Philip Sechi. If you can make a comment on that. But before you answer, I see Dr. John again. Let me just be sure. Doc, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Very good. So, Dan, hold on. Let me bring Dr. John in. There's a question for you, Doc, asking how we can build immunity against the virus when we are being asked to stay indoors. That's the question from Auntie Christy to you, Doc.
Yes, this is, we should be very, I think we should be very careful with this virus. This is a very aggressive virus. This is, I mean, as you can see within, let me just share some numbers with you so that you can put this in the context of what I mean by this is an aggressive virus. As of today, the world has witnessed this virus infect about close to 8 million people. And it's just taking us close to about 6 months to infect 8 million people with over 400,000 deaths. Another virus which has created a pandemic is the HIV virus. It took that virus 40 years to infect 75 million people. Okay, it took HIV 40 years to infect 75 million people. So this is a very aggressive virus that spreads extremely quick and is dangerous. The fatality, what do you call the case fatality? So we should be very careful. We do not aim for strategies that we just don't know. This is not a flu where most people will recover from it. I think the case fatality is pretty high, so we should be very careful with that. Now, having said that, it is, and we just don't even know that people that are infected and develop antibodies will be protected against a subsequent infection. So there are many unknowns that are out there that because it's a new virus, we've only lived with this virus for about 6 months, okay, or 5.5 months. So again, there's a lot of caution to be exercised, and when we urge, as public health experts, urge people to exercise social distancing, stay home, is really to allow and enable us to put in place strong public health measures. If we can defeat this enemy without telling you to stay home, we will make that recommendation. But it's an unknown virus, it's lethal, and it spreads very quickly. So you don't joke with this kind of a virus.
There was another question, Doc, from Henry. Henry Aite wants to know, how soon will a vaccine be developed?
I think vaccine development is in progress. You know, there are many candidate vaccines out there, which means vaccines that are being tested already, and some of those vaccines are going into what we call phase 3, just for the sake of framing the conversation appropriately. There are 3 phases in any vaccine trial. There's phase 1, where you just do a limited number of people just to prove the concept that the vaccine is safe. And then phase 2, you start looking at whether the vaccine is safe, and then it produces that your immune system can respond to it. Then phase 3 is where you really ask the question if the vaccine is effective or not effective. So there are a couple of trials going on already in phase 3 in China, and there's also some trials going on for phase 3 in Europe and the United States. So I think if you have followed the news carefully, the United States, for example, they are doing something that is highly unusual. So and this means they have enrolled about 30,000 people, and they have in phase 3, and they are following up these 30,000 people to check for efficacy of the virus, of the vaccine. At the same time, they have started the production of the vaccine. Okay, so it's a gamble. They are saying, in other words, they are saying, look, we don't have time because this virus is so dangerous and is disruptive. If the vaccine works, say, from now to October, after the completion of the phase 3, then we already have the vaccines available. But if it doesn't work, well, we throw away the vaccines, okay, and then we start afresh. So the point I'm making is that you may have a vaccine, an effective vaccine as soon as December, or you may never have a vaccine. Okay, I think viruses are very treacherous. I mean, elements to work with. That's why we have never found a vaccine for HIV. When HIV just occurred, we thought, I was a young virologist at that time. I was barely 25 years, and we thought we'll find a vaccine very quickly for HIV. And I worked in HIV for 29 years, and we don't have, still don't have a vaccine. So I gave up and abandoned it. Flu, the seasonal flu, from the same family of viruses, you see that each year you have to make new kinds of vaccines for flu, okay, for influenza. So again, we should be cautious, that we should be optimistic and hopeful, because we need vaccines to be to get our normal life back. However, we should also live with the prospects that we may not have a vaccine, and this may completely alter the way we live.
Thank you, Doc. My final question for this round for you is from Ruth. Ruth wants to know what it means when you and other scientists say the virus is mutating. What does it mean?
What it means is that the genetic material of the virus changes. Okay, I think, again, I'll take you back to some basic virology. I'm a virologist myself. So it's a very basic concept that you have to understand. So viruses are not living organisms, unlike bacteria, okay? And so it's very simple. This virus that is killing us is extremely simple. I mean, it has a genetic material, what you call the RNA, okay, and it has certain amino acids that are coded in there. Then, to protect itself, it has it shields that genetic material with a layer of lipids. That's all that it has. Okay, that's all these viruses. That's why we say you have to wash your hands with soap, because soap is a detergent. It will break off this the lipid material or the fatty membrane, and then expose the genetic material. So when you say you mutate, it means that as the virus infects person A and goes to person B, it changes, okay, that genetic material a little bit. Okay, and the virus also has to be very careful that if you change so much, then then you cannot be infectious anymore because you don't know where to bind. You remember earlier on I talked about a binding site. I mean, you have to look at a virus like a hand and a glove. So you have to have that ability to attach to the cells of a body, and then you can infect somebody. Now, the virus also has to be very careful that, I mean, if it changes too much, then you become irrelevant. So they change slowly, okay? And from as they infect one person to another, they change slowly. That is what you call mutation. Okay, so that is just what it means. It means there are certain, they call it nucleotides that have changed, and they encode a different type of protein.
Fantastic. So let me remind our viewers across the continent that this is an Ecobank live event, and we are talking to Dr. John Kengasong. He's the Director for Africa CDC, joining us from Addis Ababa. Thank you, Doc. Also joined by Mr. Daniel Saki, MD for Ecobank Ghana and Regional Executive for Anglophone West Africa region for Ecobank. We are reading your comments. If you want to send us your comments or you want to get in touch digitally, we have two hashtags. Ecobank Live is the generic hashtag. Specifically, you can also attach Ask Ecobank GH. We'll be happy to pull in your questions. Now, COVID is many things. It's health, it's social, it's economy, it's politics. So Doc is helping us on the health, and Dan is helping us on the economics. We'll leave the politics out for today. Let me read another question for Mr. Saki. This is coming from a doctor, actually. So this is coming from Dr. Elvis Kuma Forsen. But what Dr. Elvis wants to know is whether you are open as a bank to partnerships. That's the question Dr. Forsen is asking, whether Ecobank is open to partnerships in dealing with COVID-19.
Yeah, thank you, Bernard. I think that COVID-19 requires that we collaborate both on our individual levels, family levels, and also at the organization levels to be able to defeat it. Because if there's a weak link in the chain, then our entire efforts will be defeated. So yes, we are open to collaboration, and this event even demonstrates. Today we are collaborating with the CDC to be able to reach out to our clients to respond to some of the concerns that they may have regarding their health and also regarding their finances. So in the same vein, ECO as an institution, we are open to collaboration, and we'll look at it on its merit.
Are you able to comment on anything the bank is doing in Ghana COVID related in these times?
Yes, I think two things. First, when COVID started, the first concern was to take care of the vulnerable group who had very limited access to essential services, especially food and other vital service for their survival. And I was referring to those who were operating in the gig economy, those who lived on a day-to-day basis, and during the lockdown period had been denied the usual access they had to their normal workplace, which it could be the various markets, the various roadside, the various organizations. So we participated as part under the COVID-19 private sector fund to provide food and other related activities for these people to be able to survive. Beyond that 2-week period, the fund evolved into something bigger in response to the need for a properly equipped private hospital. We realized that if we had followed what was happening in the West, the key thing was that health systems were being overwhelmed. So working with the private sector, we then said, how do we prepare for a time when Africa or Ghana in that particular will peak? And if Ghana peaks, what do we do with the expected number of fatalities or even those who will need medical attention? So as part of that initiative, we focused our efforts in mobilizing resources from other private sector players to be able to contribute significantly towards the construction of the 100-bed infectious unit at the Gais Hospital. As you know, today it's virtually advanced, and we expect that it will be completed by the end of the month, and will be the first state-of-the-art infectious hospital in Ghana that will be dedicated purely to dealing with such issues. And we think that we need to go beyond COVID because, as you observe, COVID is here today. This should be part of our contribution to helping the country build resilient systems to deal with COVID and the next COVID or Ebola that may happen. So this is one of the ways we've helped.
Thank you, Daniel. And in fact, thanks to Dr. Kuma Forcing for that question, because I think the question really pulled a lot out of you. There's a quick follow-up question for Dan from Paul Shane. Since you spoke about PPEs, Paul says, will Ecobank give free face masks to customers at your branches?
No, thank you very much, Paul. As you know, the government has made the wearing of face masks mandatory, and that you are not supposed to leave your house without the face mask. So we assume that by the time you leave your house, they want to come to the bank, you already are wearing the face mask. At the beginning, those who did not have it, when they get in, we could make provision. But today, it has been made mandatory. So as a diligent citizen, we expect that Paul will be in his face mask before he leaves home, because Ecobank also is complying with the government's policy of ensuring that no face mask, no entry to the premises. So that will be Paul's direct answer. He will have one.
Okay, let me come back to Doc, and thank you, Dan, for that one. So I'm sure Paul is happy if once he has a face mask, although if he loses it, he may get a replacement at the bank, who knows. Doc, there's a question which is quite broad, but I feel it's good. The question is directed to you. And this is asking what CDC is doing to mitigate the disparaging effects of COVID-19. This question is from Kofi Wiafe. Kofi Wiafe is asking what is being done as a continent or the continental level to mitigate the disparaging effects of COVID-19. And this is from Kofi Wiafe. Doc, if you can hear me, what's your comment?
So the continent is responding to COVID-19 in an extremely coordinated way at three levels. First is at the levels of the head of states. Okay, they do meet. They've met 5 times. Okay, and about 15 of them, they call it the Bureau of the Head of States, led by the President Ramaphosa of South Africa, who is the current chair of the African Union, and has a bureau of head of states that he works with. There are 5 of them, but he usually will extend that to other regional head of states, like those that are the leads for ECOWAS, for SADC, and others. So I think, and that has been that is the pinnacle of the coordination. And you've probably heard that him announcing that there's a continental platform that has been launched that you can actually go on and you play with it, and you see you can actually buy commodities. I mean, countries can buy COVID commodities, including diagnostics. Okay, and that is all attempts to bridge the gap in the disparity, which I'm using the word disparity very broadly. So I think that is one. I think that vision, the continental strategy is underpinned by ability to coordinate, cooperate, enhance our communication across the board. So I think that is level 1. Level 2 is at the level of ministers of finance, ministers of health, and ministers of transport, separate committees that coordinate those 3 different activities. They're all geared towards mitigating the disparity that you just mentioned. Just to state this clearly, last 2 weeks ago, there was a joint meeting of all ministers of finance and ministers of health to discuss how to work closely, okay, to ensure that there is an effective response from both the finance ministers and health ministers. They all aim towards mitigating the disparities there. So all those layers of organizations ensure that we try as much as possible to mitigate disparities.
Thank you. There is another question from Kwache. This has to do with treatment. And Kwache wants to know what medications he should take or avoid if they test positive for COVID-19. Do you have a quick answer for that?
So the quick answer there is that, I mean, if you remember that up to about 70 to 80% of people that have COVID will be infected with COVID-19 will just have mild symptoms. You probably would not even know that you have it, or you develop some very mild symptoms that you just stay home. Okay, you stay home, drink a lot of fluid, drink some, get your vitamins. If you have fever, you get your basic fever reducing drugs, and you stay home, and your immune system or your white blood cells will fight off that. Okay, I think that. Then, if you are unfortunate to be amongst the next 10% or so, 15% of those who be sick, I mean, you get sick, you develop a little bit severe symptoms, that some of them will not need to go to the hospital. I mean, you can stay home and still continue to treat your symptoms, and then give time for your immune system to fight it. About 10 to 5% will really require that you go to the hospital. And the hospital, as you can, there's no drug that people that they will give you specifically to treat COVID-19. I will be all trying to make sure that you have supportive care, including improving, supporting your lungs so that your lungs can continue to function properly. That's where you talk of ventilators or oxygen respiratory support systems. So the short answer is that there is no drug that you'll be giving specifically for that. Now, I'll say this, Anna, I hear people talk about chloroquine and hydrochloroquine, and so our CDC advice, the Africa CDC guidance is that do not take hydrochloroquine or chloroquine by yourself. I mean, you have to be enrolled in a clinical trial before you take that, because the side effects are extremely dangerous. So be careful with that, especially when you take it at higher dose. If you are enrolled in a clinical trial, what does that mean? It means that you'll be monitored very closely. Your kidneys, your livers, and other functions will be measured regularly to be sure that you are not being that the drug is not being toxic to you.
All right, thank you, Doc. Let me come back to Accra. Daniel, there are a couple of questions which are related, so I'm going to join the two questions. Okay. So the first person says, what happens when my branch is closed due to suspected case or due to a second lockdown? Right? What happens when my branch is closed due to a suspected case or due to a second lockdown? And the follow-up question is there anyone I can speak to if I have detailed questions about my account without having to go to the branch? So I hope that's clear. It's a double-barreled one for you, Daniel.
Thank you, Bernard. Sorry to have a double-barreled answer. When your branch is closed, you can access the same service through the nearest branch, and we do publish regular details of the location of our various branches, either visiting our website or using our social media handle. You'll be able to determine where our branch. In fact, if you are on our mobile app, you'll be able to determine where the nearest ATM or other located service. The second question relates, second answer to that also is that you can access the same services by calling our contact center through short code 3225. And we have knowledgeable assistants who will be ready to handle all questions related to your accounts. And this is available 24/7.
Fair enough. Now, there are some questions coming in which both of you can answer. And I think I can place it to either of you, or both of you have a go at this question. So this one is from Araba Say. Araba is wondering, will society ever be the same in the post-COVID era? Daniel, I'll let you start with that before I come to Doc. Araba wants to know whether society will ever be the same post-COVID.
Look, I think society will not be the same post-COVID era, even if a vaccine is found. And talking to a couple of individuals, we believe that one of the side effects or positive side effects of COVID-19 is drawing our attention to the basic hygiene factors. If for nothing at all, I think a lot more people have now imbibed, have now followed closely the hygiene factors, and you see people washing their hands more. So even COVID aside, I think that communicable diseases that are contracted through person-to-person infections can be limited because of the attention that we've had from some of the educational efforts that have gone on and are linked to COVID-19. As to whether it will be the same or not, if you link it, still staying in the health and I'll attempt to have some basic ideas to what the health professional like Dr. Nkengason does. I think the key thing is that how do we apply the lessons that we've learned from COVID-19? And I talked about hand washing, I talked about sanitizing, I talked about social distancing. The key thing is our ability to build health systems that are resilient. If we, by virtue of having to deal with COVID-19, there is greater investment in health facilities, then we would have a positive spin in terms of our ability to cope with similar effects that may come later. If I take it to the economic sphere, specifically into banking, banking will never be the same. One, for most of our clients, having been able to access the same services through the digital channels, it has been a game changer. It is true that most people were concerned about the safety of transaction online. Most people were concerned about the safety of accessing their accounts on their phones. However, COVID-19 accelerated that push because we did not have a choice but to transact on our phones. We did not have a choice but to access our accounts through digital means. For us, the banks, the game changer is that we have also been able to test our systems during this period. We have staff who have been able to work from home. We had to close our contact center for about 48 hours, and our staff were able to take calls in their various houses and still serve our clients. They were able to access the bank systems and able to provide information to clients about their account details. That has introduced new ways of working. And for us, working from home will now be a feature of banking life going forward. So life as we know it, both in the health related, both in finance and banking, will not be the same post-COVID.
Thank you. Doc, Araba's question is the same. Will society ever be the same post-COVID? From Araba Say.
So, you see, yes and no. Okay, would it ever be the same? The no part is that, I mean, what has just been explained, that the COVID has led to two things. One is what we call disruptive innovation. Okay, and where you hear my colleague from the banking sector explain all of that, he has accelerated that, which I mean that links up to the second thing that we are led. We used to think that you have to travel to Ghana for a meeting. Now we can do it virtually, and we realize that is as effective as coming to Ghana to do that meeting. I think that is important. So that leads to the second part of the no, which is the fourth industrial revolution, which is digital. I mean, it has pushed us, I mean, at the edge, which we thought that fourth industrial revolution would be years to come. I mean, our children were able to finish the school year by sitting home and learning and doing their homeworks and receiving lectures on computers and internet. So I think it's, I mean, we should see that as changes that will completely alter the way we do business. Okay. Now, the piece that well, I can be optimistic and say it will be the same. We'll come back to normal if we do what my colleague just mentioned, which is to strengthen the health systems there. Then we'll go back to normal and get a vaccine and treatment there. Now, I'm optimistic that we'll find treatment. I'm optimistic that will be vaccines. We have no choice. I mean, to apply science to resolve this. Only science will make us go back to normal. The reason that I say this is that I backed myself up by 3 different episodes. Unfortunately, they all happened 100 years on interval. In 1720, the world was faced with a plague, a pandemic. Okay, and we thought, I mean, cities like Marseille in France, half of the population in that city was wiped out by plague in 1720. Then 100 years later, we thought life would never be normal. So life was normal. The world lived, humanity lived peacefully until 1820. Cholera outbreak that devastated Asia. Okay, and we thought life would never be normal. It was normal. And we learned from it. And then in 1920, the Spanish flu hit. For 2 years, it killed about 50 million people. and we thought that humanity would never be normal. It was normal. And now 100 years later, in 2020, the COVID has hit us again. So, I'm optimistic. And if you look at what has helped us across those several centuries is science. Good science has led to production of good antibiotics, and where we can treat those bacterial infections. Previously, the first two were bacterial infections, and then the last two are viral infections. So because of our resilience as human beings and scientists or the universe, we'll be able to, when we are pushed to the wall, we invent things, and we invent vaccines or new drugs that will bring life to normal. But other fundamentals will remain, that we can now accelerate the use of our internet or digital systems to operate, and the things that we felt that we absolutely come to work to do the needful will be done more.
Thank you very much. We are wrapping up with all the questions. I want to try and sort of box them into one because the different questions I can ask. So Daniel, I think from what I'm seeing with these questions coming through, people want you to give them a sense of hope. What's going to happen? Will I be able to afford the loan in the next 6 months? Will you be there for me if COVID persists, say December? What's your final word for all these questions around uncertainties on the bank side and whether they can still have access to credit and still be able to run their businesses normally, no longer how long this is? So Daniel, that's the final sort of omnibus question for you.
Thank you. Yes, you are right. There is uncertainty, and when there is uncertainty, one of the things we're asking our clients to do is, first of all, to prioritize. Initially, during the first phase, our priority was safety for staff, safety for our clients, and then access to basic services. We have moved from that to the second phase to say being able to give you the capacity to transact wherever you are, to run your business wherever you are, giving you access via your mobile app and also via our Ecobank online service. If this is where we are today, how do we guarantee that we'll be there to support our clients' individual lives and in their businesses? To do that, the banks themselves have to be resilient. To be resilient, banks operate in an ecosystem. It is important that the collaboration that we've seen so far between banks and the government continue in terms of being given the right environment, because if COVID persists till December, obviously the normal things that we used to do cannot apply. So we also expect that our clients who probably need access to credit, those credits will be related to normalcy. For example, if you want a credit, let's say to operate a restaurant, which is closed during COVID, of course, you're not going to get access to that because it will be another way of leading you into further debt. But if that credit is required to produce, for example, hand sanitizer that we need to operate or to survive in this era, yes, you will find that the bank is there ready to help. Going forward, we believe, yes, there is hope. Like others have said before, one of the things that has allowed us as Africans, and especially if I take the case of Ghana, if I take the case of Nigeria, if I take the case of Kenya and others, to survive by making sure that basic banking services are not disrupted. Don't forget that our level of the population which is banked, if you define it traditionally to include those who have bank accounts, then it's very low across the continent, less than 20%. But if you define it to those who have access to financial services, either via a mobile phone or any other related product, then that percentage increases significantly. Looking at the number of people who today have mobile wallets across the African continent, over 300 million people. So we believe that this was an African solution. Following from that, our view is that we should not copy Europe blindly. We need to have African solutions for African problems. We need to learn the lessons from what is happening in Europe and the US and try and adapt that. Adapting that means that we should make digitization work for us. We should ensure that we can protect our people who are transacting on their digital platforms. We should be able to guarantee the safety of their funds. We should be able to guarantee the safety of lodgements they make into their accounts. Finally, for me, it is important that in doing this, we don't leave out a vital segment of the population, which is women. If you look at our population structure, a certain number of people are women. And also for most of the families, there are women in charge of economic affairs. If you want to look at it from that perspective, then it's important that going forward, we are able to mainstream products and services to focus on gender, to give such people involved in the gig economy the capacity to have access to finances, to ensure that that vulnerable segment of our economy, of our population, will continue to be taken care of. It is only when there is peace in that segment that we believe that we will be well positioned to handle the middle and then the upper segment. Thank you. So yes, there is hope. Clients are sure that they will get pumped
up as we have run. Thank you. I have for Dr. John Kengasong. You are a virologist. What is your COVID-19 prognosis for Africa? In how long is it going to be with us? What's the future looking like? In a minute. I can't get your sound. If you can fiddle with your.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was saying my prognosis is that this is going to get worse before it gets better. So we have to prepare for a marathon, not a sprint. And it is everybody's responsibility to cooperate with the public health officials as well as the government officials so that collectively we can beat this virus. But it's going to be a challenge and a challenge that we must win anyway. It's a battle that we must win for our own survival. I mean, let that be absolutely clear to everybody, and it requires that we do our own little part in this battle.
Thank you very much, Dr. John Kengasong, Director Africa CDC, joining us from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and also to Daniel Saki, MD of Ecobank, joining us from Accra. We need to inform all our viewers and customers that your questions that could not be answered will actually be answered on our social media handles. So this is just the beginning of a series of conversations we're hoping to have on different things. And if you want to join us later on, the hashtag is Ecobank Live and also Ask Ecobank GH. This has been an Ecobank Live event moderated by Bernard Avle, radio and TV journalist here in Accra. Thank you, Mr. Saki. Thank you, Dr. Kengasong. We will be with you next time. And of course, thank you all our numerous customers across the continent. Bye-bye.
Right, thank you, Bernard. Thank you, John. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Viewers, we welcome you to a special conversation on COVID-19 in Africa called the Ecobank Live event, a special initiative of the Ecobank Group to engage customers and the wider public across their 36 footprints in Africa to create awareness and provide support for COVID-19 within the continent. My name is Bernard Avle. I'm a radio and TV journalist based in Accra, Ghana, and I have two very distinguished guests for this program. From Addis Ababa, we are very privileged to have Dr. John Kengasong, who is the director of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. He's joining us from Ethiopia. Doc, great to have you. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to join your program.
Thank you. We're also privileged to have the Managing Director for Ecobank Ghana Limited, Mr. Daniel Saki, who is also the Regional Executive for AngloGold Anglophone West Africa. Mr. Saki, great to have you. Hello.
Thank you, Bernard. Good to have you too.